As we move past that initiation phase, we then have to get into the maintenance phase of relationships. And that is where we see the relationship to continue and to maybe even escalate in some ways. And during the maintenance phase of the relationship, you definitely want to be able to spend quality time with the other person. And usually it's a sign and indication that you care because you choose to spend time with them rather than do some other activity. And that time also that's spent together is time that you can share interest. When you are building memories and a history together, you're developing patterns of interaction with one another. This is time in which you can reciprocate more intimate self-disclosures with one another, and so this is important during the maintenance stage. Also, you begin to merge social networks. So rather than being my friends and your friends, my family, your family, and things like that, you actually begin to share friendships with one another and with one another's friends. You go do things with one another's friends. Also, you maybe meet the other person's family, you spend time with their family. So this is when you start to merge different social networks. And through the course of this, you refer to one another as we rather than, me versus you. It's we. It's a singular unit rather than it being two separate things. And so this is an important indication of the strength of a relationship, is when you have that sort of collective ownership over the relationship. Also, there's a willingness to sacrifice. That is, I'm willing to sacrifice something I want to do, something that I want to spend my time doing in order to spend time with you, in order to do what you want to do. And this willingness to sacrifice is very important because it gives the other person an indication of the value that you place in the relationship. So during this maintenance phase, though, it can be complicated by a number of different factors. It can be complicated by a major change that you have in your life, like for example, when you graduate from high school and maybe you go off to college and a lot of your friends and your friend networks go somewhere different. And so you're in a different phase of your life, plus there's physical distance between you and the other person. Another major phase that you have in your life that affects maintenance of relationships is when you get your first professional job, or if you changed jobs, or if you got married, or if you had a child. All these things are major changes in your life, and this will affect the way that you maintain a relationship. And one of the major problems that arises in a relationship is physical distance between you and the other relational partner, especially if the relationship began as a face-to-face relationship in which you spent time with one another. Computer-mediated communication, often abbreviated as CMC, is one way that we are able to bridge some of the gaps in our relationships, especially that related to a physical barrier of geography. You have to think about why and how we use technology to maintain relationships. There's a number of reasons why, and I'm sure you could probably list them just as easy as I am here, but accessibility is one. By and large, computers are very accessible to us. Whether it be the public sphere, you have access to them at public libraries and other public places, or it be the professional sphere through your workplace, you have access to a computer. Educationally, you have access to the computer. But of course, according to Pew Research, our personal computer usage, that which we own ourselves, is growing in enormous numbers and exponentially, especially in populations where they couldn't afford it previously. And computers are becoming much more affordable, and you can buy them at very low cost. And so the cost of computer-mediated communication lots of times is a lot less than the cost of even calling someone and having a phone plan that's very effective for you reaching people across distances, because it can be very costly. And some of the things that you can do via computer-mediated communication, like for example, have live chats with somebody and actually have a video chat with them, and you can do that with someone who's completely across the globe. So that can be very cost effective rather than paying for a phone call. Now, convenience is also an important thing to consider in these relationships, because we spend so much of our time on the computer, professionally, for our education, and all these different venues. We're on the computer so often that it's easy for us just to check email or IM somebody or go into Facebook and post something. And And so convenience really plays a big role in our use of computer-mediated communication. Also, it's a way for us to overcome barriers. Barriers can take on many different forms. I think geography is the most apparent and overt barrier that we can think about, but other barriers may include things like introversion. You may be very shy. It may be very difficult for you to initiate or maintain relationships with somebody because you just feel like you're not very confident. You have a lot of maybe even communication apprehension. Then other barriers may include time and time constraints. Maybe you work shift work, or maybe you work a lot of hours, or maybe you have a really heavy course load one semester. Those are all sorts of things that may prevent you from having traditional face-to-face communication with a group of people because they don't keep the same hours you do. Also, another reason why we may use computer-mediated communication is because we can find social support in ways that we couldn't otherwise. Now, I don't know if you've ever gone to a chat room before, but I actually study computer-mediated communication and how social support is available on the computer online where it wouldn't be elsewhere. And for example, I've done some work with looking at the American Association of Retired People, the AARP, and message boards in which people are able to communicate and give advice to one another and offer support for one another when they're transitioning from one job to another, or maybe even one career to another in some cases. And these are people that are oftentimes 65 years old or 70 years old, and they're having to change careers at that time. And so there's no support group that they can go to face to face, but online they could find really unique form of support. And there's a lot of different social support kind of chat rooms that exist, a lot of them related to medical conditions that people have, where they can reach out to one another. Now, how we achieve this online can be very different because some people like to use social networking websites like Facebook and MySpace. Some people use chat rooms that are related to maybe a particular organization. Some people use instant messaging, even video chats online. Some people are online gamers and they communicate with other online gamers and they share inside secrets, and sometimes they don't want to share inside secrets, in the form of communication with other online gamers is they're talking smack to them. Yeah, some people actually, they just rely on email and they like email. I hate to say email's old-fashioned. That seems so kind of strange to say, but it is the kind of the old-fashioned computer-mediated communication, and it's kind of the old standard. So you have a lot of hows in terms of the way that we communicate with one another. There are a couple of vocabulary words I want you to be familiar with. EIB is exclusively internet-based relationships, and PIB are primarily internet-based relationships. Primarily internet-based relationships are growing exponentially because so many people are using the internet now to maintain relationships solely. Like, they only really email old friends or get on Facebook or MySpace and post things for their old friends. And so it's really growing in popularity. Also, the exclusive internet-based relationships are growing as well because people actually will meet new people online, and they're only going to have an online relationship with them. They're not going to have a face-to-face relationship. So it's kind of interesting to consider in relational maintenance.